Hey guys, how you doing? Well, I'm doing okay. I have a lot to talk about. And it has to do with what's going on. Okay. America never claimed to be perfect. Matter of fact, see, I'm a never-ending student of sociology, psychology, and sociology. But in this case, in this discussion, I want to focus on sociology. And in sociology, there's a concept of the norm. Now, I'm a nonconformist. I march to the beat of my own drum. Whatever is normal, I have a choice to go with it or not. Most times, I don't. Now, whenever there's a sociological norm, there will be a minority that objects to it, which is perfectly okay. Now, just because it's a norm doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's good, it means it's popular. Now, it seems that violence is now popular. Violence seems to be the norm. Destruction is now the norm. Violence is now popular. Does that mean it's good? No. Just because it's normal, just because it's popular, doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And we've had norms in our country, and in fact, over time, and those norms were challenged, and in some cases, they were overturned. One of which was the fact that women were not allowed to vote until people object to it. And at one time, I think about 100 years ago, law was passed that allowed women to vote. Now, in Judaism, women were not allowed to pray, or rather, they were not obligated to pray, but if they wanted to go and sit in the synagogue to pray, they could not sit with the men. That was the normal rule. So they would have to sit on the sidelines. And the main reason was that the rule was they were concerned that having the woman sitting with her husband, that would distract him from prayer. And that was the reason why women were never rabbis or cantors, for the very same reason. They were concerned that looking at a woman on the bima would distract the men from prayer. So women were not allowed to be rabbis or cantors. In the Reform branch of Judaism, that all changed. And in some conservative congregations, that changed also. Now, then came the prayer book. Now, with the prayers, and this is more current, by the way, that the prayers for centuries were the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the patriarchs. And then somewhere, I may be in Reconstructionist Judaism, I don't know, they said, why are the wives being left out? So they then changed it to a more modern prayer book that is gender inclusive. So God of Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and his wife, and Isaac and Jacob and their wives. To me, I don't like the change. It's clumsy. because I grew up with the flow of God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then when you include the wives, it clutters it up, in my opinion. And then when I say Abraham, I'm ready to say Isaac, but I can't because I have to include Sarah. So Sarah being there clutters up the flow. And then I got to go through Abraham and Sarah, and then Isaac, and I'm ready to say Jacob, but I can't because we got to include Isaac's wife. So to some people, they love it. For me, I don't like it. I don't like it not because I'm anti anything. It's just that it's just what I'm used to. And so it's basically a sociological norm over a long period of time. Same thing of any norms, okay, that we grow up with. So at one point, it was the norm to have slavery. And then what do we say about that? And what do we say about racism? That was very strong, especially in the 1950s. But that wasn't to be the case for long, because in the 1960s there was a racial revolution, and things changed. So what was normal? Okay, I'll give you normal. Okay, what do you have to say about the white and Caucasian and people of color having separate bathrooms, having separate water fountains to drink out of, having different places to eat? That existed up through the 1950s. What do you have to say about that? That's right. That's right. But did that stay that way and on? No. That all changed around the time I was born. So did I grow up around that? No. I didn't grow up around that. I never saw that in my community. Everyone sat together. Everyone went to school together. I heard of busing, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what busing was all about. I didn't know about integrated schools and things like that. Because when I went to school, there were many Caucasians, yes, but there were also children of color who went to school with me. So, matter of fact, when I was a little boy, I made a few friends. One of them happened to be a boy of color, but I didn't see color. I just saw a very nice little boy who I liked and who liked me. Didn't matter what his skin color was. And I grew up that way. Now, there's another, and so that was a norm that was changed over the years. And as I grew up, there was equality between the races. And that's what I grew up with. Now, norms, not just because it's a norm means it's popular, but doesn't mean that it's good. right? Right now, the norm is anarchy, it seems. Right now, that's all we see. So all we see are the violence and the anarchy, and so we're thinking that it's normal. Is it good? No. So just because it's normal doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's perfect. It means it's popular, and I'll give you another example. In the Torah, there's a story about Abraham sacrificing his son to God. Okay? And there were many people who objected to that and wanted the story to be excised from the Torah because it was inconceivable for God to want human sacrifice, because that's not what we were taught God was. So I learned the answer to that question when a rabbi covered that very thing. And I'm going to share with you. So, in Abraham's time, what would you say about human sacrificing of your own child? So let's take a look at this story. And it's Genesis chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham. And he said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And God said, please take your son, your only son whom you love, yea, Isaac, and go away to the land of Moriah, and bring him up there for a burnt offering to one of the mountains of which I will tell you. And Abraham arose early in the morning and saddled his donkey, and he took 2 young men with him and Isaac his son, and he split wood for a burnt offering, and he arose and went to the place of which God had told him. And Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood. And he bound Isaac, his son, and placed him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. And an angel of God called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, do not stretch forth your hand to the lad, nor do the slightest thing to him. For now I know that you are a God-fearing man, and you did not withhold your son, your only son, from me. Now, why that is there, I don't know. But this is why people thought this is God's test. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and lot there was a ram. And after that, it was caught in a tree by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered up as a burnt offering instead of his son. Now, burnt offerings of one's children was the norm. It was a sign of the times. So the point of the story is not Abraham binding up his son as a burnt offering. The point of the story is in the climax, the ending, of which God basically said, no, we are not going to do what society does. We are going to do different than what the norm is in this society. In the society in which we live, human sacrifice of one's children is the norm. And we are going against the norm. It's the same thing with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The point of the story isn't all the terrible things that happen within the story. The point of the story is at the ending, the end. That's the point of the story. So, now, things have changed. Now, one bad cop or two bad cops or three bad cops out of how many cops in this country? Has anybody thought to count them? How many cops in each precinct? How many precincts in each county? How many counties in each state? And you are going to vilify the entire police force of, who knows, thousands and thousands and thousands of cops out of the actions of only a few. When you put that on the scale, is that really fair? The same thing with torching that Wendy's. Besides the fact, are you going to torch every Wendy's now? I just thought of that. Wendy's is the villain here. Wendy's, that restaurant, is the villain. So why don't we all burn down every Wendy's everywhere? And was it really Wendy's fault that what happened? Really? Is that what we're saying? That if it weren't for Wendy's, did Wendy's call George Floyd to them? Or did George Floyd volunteer to go to Wendy's and go through the drive-thru? Was it George's idea to go to Wendy's, or was it Wendy's idea to summon George to the drive-thru? So we're going to burn down Wendy's. We're going to have a really good reason why. Because what you're saying is that George Floyd did not volunteer to go to Wendy's. That Wendy's summoned him to that particular restaurant. That Wendy's directed him, ordered him, Mr. Floyd, come to Wendy's immediately. Come to our restaurant immediately. Because if you're going to burn down Wendy's because this happened to George Floyd, then that is a narrative that you are basically asserting. That George Floyd did not choose to go to Wendy's, that Wendy's summoned him, directed him, called him, Mr. Floyd, it's imperative that you come to our restaurant. Imperative. Do not haste. You must come to our drive-thru. Because if you're going to burn down Wendy's, that is what you're basically saying. So, what is happening now in our country is sad, tragic. And in our next video, in my next video, I am going to offer an interesting, argument in regarding to this. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening in. I'll see you next time in part 2 of this multi-part video. Take care, guys. See you soon. Bye.